Hey all, Ron here from Military Images Magazine with a new episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail. Fears for the safety of President elect Abraham Lincoln leading up to his inauguration in March 1861, particularly the role of Allan Pinkerton and his detectives, and Lincoln's infamous clandestine passage through pro secession Baltimore are especially well known to students of the Civil War. Less remembered are other threats to the officer pictured here, General Winfield Scott, the Mexican War hero and senior general in the United States Army, and other calls for attacks on the Capitol building itself. Scott's trusted assistant adjutant general, Edward Davis Townsend, life dates 1817 to 1893, left a record of the tensions of those times in his 1884 memoir, Anecdotes of the Civil War in the United States. I want to share relevant passages from his volume in which he includes an example of the threats and paints a vivid picture of his role and Scott's role and reaction to all of this. Townsend begins early in the commencement of the secession troubles. General Scott had his lodgings in the house of Cruchet, a French caterer on 6th Street, opposite what was then the Unitarian Church and is now the police court. One of his aides lodged on the opposite side of the street. A company of artillery serving as infantry was quartered a few blocks away, and a sergeant's guard detailed from this company was always on duty at the general's lodgings. About this time, a large number of communications were received from several northern states, Canada, Kentucky, and other parts of the South, and from Europe, especially from Germany. Some of them anonymous, others signed with a name. All concurred in the declaration that a plot existed to assassinate President Lincoln and General Scott. They agreed singularly in the details and sometimes in fixing the same dates for the attempt. The staff opened the general's mails, and we decided not to annoy him by telling him everything of this threatening character which we received, but only to inform him of so much of the contents of the communications as seemed necessary for him to know. One of these letters was from a clergyman living in a most prominent secession city and read as follows, the names being purposely left blank. Blank, February 14th, 1861. General Winfield Scott. Respected Sir, a man by the name of blank was taken suddenly ill at the blank hotel, and desiring the services of a minister, I was called in. He had hardly time to confess to me that he was an accomplice to a most diabolical scheme of undermining and blowing up the Capitol on the Ides of March. I am constrained by his request to write you immediately, hoping that you may succeed in frustrating so diabolical a plan. I am truly yours, Rector Church of blank blank. So many of these statements agreed in affirming that the general would be attacked on a certain Thursday that I could not help feeling unusual apprehension, and I determined to leave nothing undone to defeat the diabolical plot. The evening before that Thursday, one of the aides who had been to the general's quarters called at my house and told me the general wished to see me. In order to be prepared with any official information that might be required, I asked if he had mentioned why he wished to see me. The aide replied no, but he thought the general felt a little uneasy at being alone so far away from where all the officers lived, the aide who was quartered near him being temporarily absent in New York. I went down about 8 o'clock and found, as had been suggested, that I was merely wanted for company. I now thought it best to tell the general frankly that we apprehended an attempt on his life the next night and wished he could be persuaded to move on the morrow to some lodgings near the War Department, where immediate access could be had to him. He at first made light of it, said that he felt quite secure with his guard and that he did not place much reliance on the anonymous letters. I urged upon him that we had no right in such times to disregard even such sources of information, but when so many coming from places so far apart agreed in such a singular and circumstantial manner in their assertions, I thought it an imperative duty to use extraordinary precautions. At length he consented that I should procure him suitable lodgings and agreed to move the next day. I remained with him till 11 o'clock, after offering to stay all night and keep watch by him, to which he would not listen. Then I gave the guard minute cautions and instructions. The sergeant was, on the occurrence of anything unusual, to send immediately to the company quartered near and dispatch a messenger for me. The next morning, I engaged the kind offices of Captain Palmer of the Corps of Engineers, who had more leisure than I to hunt up new quarters for the general. He found very comfortable ones at Mrs. Duval's, a house, number 159, still standing back in a yard on the south side of Pennsylvania Avenue, between 17th and 18th Streets. I dined with the general at Cruchet's Thursday evening, and after dark, we drove in his coupe to Mrs. Duval's. The headquarters company was moved to a house on 17th Street, opposite the War Department. The sergeant's guard was stationed in an outbuilding in the yard of the general's quarters, where it could hear orders conveyed in a whisper, and sentinels were posted in the yards in front and rear of the house. The backyard extended through to G Street near its junction with 17th, and the whole company could hear an alarm shot and, in 2 minutes, be at the general's side. For several nights, until arrangements were made for an aide to lodge in the house, I rested on a sofa in the outer room next to the general's chamber, with sword and revolver at hand, fully expecting that some attempt would be made upon us. Nor shall I ever be convinced that anything prevented it except the evident state of preparation and watchfulness which was maintained. Every half hour in the night, I visited the sentinels and took observations of the neighborhood. There was a wood yard on each side of the house, and frequently in the night the peculiar secession whistle was heard coming from some one in those yards. I would then send out a patrol to search these yards. There were discharges of guns frequently in the night, and the inmates of the house heard bullets strike against its brick walls. The gentlemen boarders, among them a young clergyman, were at their request furnished with firearms, and they would have used them to good effect in the general's defense. So enthusiastic was their veneration for him. Whenever General Scott alighted from his coupe to pass to his office, lines were formed by persons, generally in humble life, who removed their hats, who frequently uttered a fervent, "God bless you, General," as he passed them. Sometimes dark-visaged men would be seen on corners of the street intently scrutinizing him, and we were told by a stable keeper nearby that on 2 or 3 occasions very suspicious looking men had asked him all sorts of questions as to where the general lived, how many officers he had on his staff, and what sort of looking men they were, and that he had once seen them take notes after such a conversation. There was a young officer of cavalry attached to the general's staff as an extra aide. He was quite proud of his uniform and his fine horsemanship, and certainly was a good looking fellow. I had heard there was a company formed near Tenali Town, back of Georgetown, which was drilling at night under suspicious circumstances. As this young officer was intimately acquainted in Georgetown and vicinity, I directed him to go out cautiously and try to ascertain the facts without letting his mission be known. He could not forego the gratification of displaying his uniform and military trappings to his old friends, so out he galloped in complete and martial equipment. He went to a storekeeper whom he knew and believed to be a Union man, and bluntly inquired of him about what he wanted to ascertain. The man told him he had heard there was such a company under drill, but did not know much about it. He promised to ascertain and let him know in a day or two if he would go out again. But, said he, when you come again, I advise you to come in citizen's dress, or else bring a guard with you. All General Scott's staff are known and marked, and some of these times, if they don't look out, they will get an inch of cold steel in them. These are some of the incidents that occurred every day, especially in the middle of April 1861, which kept us vigilant night and day. No wonder that for weeks we lived in the constant expectation that as we proceeded on our way from the general's quarters to our own, often late at night, we might anytime be assailed from behind a tree or from some dark alley. So there's the story of Assistant Adjutant General Townsend. Imagine him and his fellow aides guarding General Scott for some period of weeks from February to mid April 1861, living life hour by hour in constant fear that something could happen to the venerable General Scott. Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode of Life on the Civil War Research Trail.